Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Any LEOs or military guys here that served or are serving? What was the scariest thing that you saw? Be it unexplained or explainable, and what did you use a gun?
Although I have never served personally, I did militia stuff for a while, and have heard plenty of stories from game wardens, park rangers. The park ranger is some national park. Had issues with people who went off trails, mostly drunks and tourists. And said rangers would be forced to go out there and get them. A lot of the time it's pretty bog standard. Drunk idiots tend to be injured with sprained or broken ankles, and the tourists just got lost because they were following wildlife with cameras. One day this starts changing. The tourists start disappearing off trails and for some reason are not being found. Mind you, it's still a national park, so the reality of the situation is some probably got injured and fell victim to the elements or predation by local wildlife. And then they started finding remains. At first it was pretty standard fare, but some of the bodies started to really bug our ranger friend. Some of them had obvious man-made marks, such as stabbing wounds, gunshots, etc. Every time this would happen, they would be instructed to just file it under the same as the rest. Just another lost tourist or drunk that got injured and died from the elements. Ranger friend is obviously a bit peeved about filing possible murder cases as misadventure, and tries to look into it. Other rangers are also a bit peeved, but the old breed rangers, like guys with 10+ years experience, are adamant that everyone just lets it go. Ranger friend tries to pry information from the older guys, but at first is stonewalled to hell and back. Always a ring around about how it could just be a case of self-end. Ranger friend is not buying this. Decides to wait till after work and gets one of the older guys to go drinking. After getting this old guy sufficiently buzzed, the old guy finally loosens his lips. The reality of the situation is mundane, but terrifying nonetheless. Most national parks are prowled by a serial killer or two. These serial killers get gratification from hunting people who stray from the trails. Most of them hunt with knives, spears, and bows, keeping it silent aside from the sudden scream and gasp of air leaving someone's lungs after a lung shot. If you have realized that this sounds a lot like those missing 411 cases, well, congrats. You are correct. The vast majority of missing 411 cases are simply down to serial killers who hunt people in national parks. So why is the Park Service not telling people about this? Simple. Why would you scare your cash cows away from national parks? No tourists, no money. Simple as can be. If you look at some serial killers that have been caught, you will actually see them talk about how they prey on people in national parks. Donald Leroy Evans, the wrist stop killer, stated he killed over 70. Marvin Gray claimed to have killed 41, with several in national parks. If I remember correctly, there was a duo that claimed they killed over 200, but I cannot remember their names for the life of me. Either way, Anons, just make sure you follow the trails and pack heat while camping.
Also homeless/mountain men. I've been camping and hiking the parks and wildernesses of the lower 48 most of my life, and I've only encountered it once, but from my acquaintances with the Ranger Service and law enforcement, there are a fair few homeless out there that will get desperate for food or gear, especially in late fall, and some kill over it. Be me. October 2013. San Juan Mountains in southwest Colorado. Have a tent just inside the tree line near an alpine lake to do some hikes. The rainfly is greenish-brown, so hard to spot, also not worried about other people as it's after the first snow and a lot of hikers don't go to this part of the San Juans. Mid-afternoon, sun is about to go down over the peaks. Walking back to my camp after doing a peek. I'm about 150 yards away from my camp when I see movement near my tent. At first I think it's a black bear, and even though black bears aren't usually this high this time of year as they're packing in calories for winter, I have still heard stories. Pull out my GP100 and binoculars. A very dirty and disheveled man with old-ass equipment and a hunting rifle is creeping slowly towards my tent. His head is on a swivel and is darting in all directions. In retrospect it was quite stupid, but I take a shot at a tree right next to my tent as he's kneeling down next to it, presumably to unzip it. I hit the tree as I can see the bark fly off maybe 6 feet above his head. He bolts, runs down the valley. I watch him run for quite a ways before I rush in and pack up my tent. I leave by going back the way I came, towards the peak, and crest the saddle into another valley. Chicago Basin for those who know the area. Follow it to the Needleton Bridge at night and follow the train tracks back to Durango. Get back to Durango in the middle of the night and check into the Budget Inn on the north side of town. Tell the cops the next day and basically get. Yeah, we hear about that guy from time to time.
Imagine coming across that guy when he's armed and desperate. Good on you for putting the fear of God into him. Ever see any other spooky things?
Nothing that got me riled up like that. There was one time I was in the Ashley National Forest in Utah. I was taking a dump at like 2 a.m. Total cloud cover, pitch black, only had my headlamp. As I was doing my business, I heard a snap like 30 feet behind me. A mountain lion was stepping halfway out from behind some bushes, frozen, looking right at me. I bark a loud hey as I put my back to a tree and pull up my pants while my head is darting in all directions. I make my way back to the tents. Probably a good 100 feet away. Never saw it again. My girlfriend at the time was in my tent and asked what all the commotion was about, and I told her and she said it was bullshit. The other couple that was hiking with us in the other tent said I was just trying to get them worked up. The next morning I showed them the spot where probably the largest load I've ever produced was sitting, and I found the paw prints nearby. Looks like it had made a big broad circle to get behind me. Other than that, you see strange lights in the sky from time to time. Saw what looked like 9 to 10 guys with flashlights in the far distance chasing another guy with a flashlight out in Sequoia National Forest east of Fresno. They were several miles away down in the valley. As I was up on a ridge, it was dusk. All the flashlights caught up with the one and then turned back. No idea what that was about.
Same poster of the ranger story from earlier. And I'm sorta all-nighting because my pets are all freaking out thanks to Murica Day. Take note, the following is something that was discussed as a warning within the militia group I hanged around. Be about 2010. Militia group I hanged around started having weird incidents out in a desert. A lot of the incidents were cases where we would find random Americans crossing the border illegally and see them having full-blown panic attacks. Mind you, we were used to dealing with idiots that OD'd on drugs that small dealers would try smuggling in via the all-baking soda and condom method. Seriously, do not do this method. Be smart and smuggle things in by embedding the narcotics into plastics and fabrics. Anyway, back on topic. Because of this, we reached out, as a right-wing militia, to one of the local anarchist groups that provided medical care for the homeless. The anarchist group was willing to help, so long as they could also make sure we were not violating or harming people crossing the border. Fine with us, we just need someone who can deal with situations as they arise. Nary little adventure of far left and far right paramilitary people wandering around in the desert near the border commences. Adventure. The first few times patrolling with these guys was fairly uneventful. Most of the time we would find immigrants who had run out of water or food, and the anarchist group would help us load them up so they could be taken to nearby hostels or anarchist commune houses. It was part of the agreement that drug mules would be handed over. But Juan busting his ass at the local pistachio farm was the anarchists' territory. This agreement had hiccups obviously, but it worked out. One day the anarchists let us take one of their guys who had worked as an EMS and specialized in dealing with narcotics. This came after finding some folks that had embraced the drug panada method and ended up ODing because of it. EMS bro was very professional about his work and mostly joined with the anarchist group because he wanted to help the local communities that had been going through surges in meth and heroin. Because the drugs mentioned were fairly popular in terms of smuggling, he also brought some drug testing kits and some narcotics that could help counteract or at least increase the amount of time we had to rush someone to the hospital. Once again, very professional and understood what needed to be done to prevent someone from going blue and purple. The day we take this guy out on patrol, we managed to run into a duo that had been out camping off a nearby mountain trail. One individual was in a panic about their friend having a meltdown, but this individual was also showing symptoms of what at first appeared to be an overdose on some kind of upper narcotic. For example, meth or amphetamines. We managed to calm the person down so our EMS friend could look at him, but the second person was further up the trail raving like someone possessed. Of course, we had to go up and bring this person back down, as they for the most part were completely out of it. Guy was raving about seeing things, and saying that the skin on his body was melting. Bro, it's the desert in late spring. No shit. The sun hates all of us. We bring this guy back to EMS friend and notice that he looks confused. Patrol leader asks,
Is everything all right?
I have no idea what this guy took. His vitals are fine, no drugs are showing up on the test, and he's saying that he took nothing. EMS points his hand at the nearby drug kits. Now please realize that on-the-spot drug tests sorta need a drug, saliva, or hair sample to test. These drug tests also happen to be DIY kits the anarchist cooked up because of course they were. Patrol leader asks,
So, what do we do?
Let's just give him some bottled water for now. And watch him.
EMS looks over at the second guy and sees he's twitching really badly. And he pulls him aside and does the same as the first. Ask if the guy took or ate anything, what kind of recreational or required narcotics they may be taking, runs vital checks. The makeshift drug test. Name it, and EMS probably did it at some point. After about 10 minutes, patrol leader asks what this one's issue was and EMS turns around, and I'll never forget this.
I have no idea.
Both these guys claimed that they were on no medications, were not on drugs, and just went camping as bros. The only thing that came up as a possibility was that they were practicing foraging, and they had been mucking about near some cacti and bushes.
Maybe they found a nest of those Africanized wasps.
One of our guys chimed in.
No marks or wounds either.
At this point we are all stumped and decide to just watch these guys and take them back down the trail once they are stable. We even helped pack up their tents and brought them back down with us. After about an hour we managed to get back to our vehicles down the trail, as well as get them to their own beat-up SUV. And here's the kicker. Said SUV overheated. Thanks, son. So now we need to call a tow yard, but shocker. No service because mountains.
All right, Anon, you go with those two in the truck and go to town and get a mechanic.
You and Doc.
We cannot leave these guys here alone in case they go unstable again. Just get the mechanic and hurry back.
All right, and we got in the truck and drove off to the nearest town, which was about 10 miles away. We managed to come back about an hour later. But when we arrived, we find the duo inside patrol leader's SUV curled up in balls crying. Nearby we also see the patrol leader and the EMS at low ready with the guns they brought.
Yo, what the hell is going on?
These guys have a mental breakdown or something, I inquired while the second militia guy we went out with was coming up with the mechanic and his tow truck. EMS looks over at us and I swear to God, he looked like that one drawing of the 1,000-yard stare. See pic.
I don't know. You guys left, and we kept hearing things rustling around in the bushes.
Dude, it was probably lizards or something.
Hell no. Whatever is out here was watching us.
Yells patrol leader, who may I add just flagged us with an AR-15. This guy was one of the most anal about rules of firearm safety, and he just completely threw that out the window. Mechanic get the beater SUV hooked up and asks us to bring the two campers in our own vehicle. Because you know, panic attack. We all pile in whatever respective vehicle we could get to. I for some godforsaken reason got in with EMS and patrol leader, who also had the campers. The two campers started calming down when we left the area. But EMS and patrol leader were watching every bush, tree, and cacti along the road. After we managed to get the campers to the safety of a local hostel, EMS guy starts talking about something the first guy mentioned while we were chasing the second camper up the trail.
He kept saying that they had heard similar sounds to the rustling in the bushes all night.
EMS is clearly confused with the whole situation, but while talking about this, we noticed patrol leader was getting twitchy as well.
What the hell? Is he sick now as well?
EMS looked over at the patrol leader and clearly is stunned, because it's fairly obvious that it's the same symptoms the campers had. EMS tells him that he's probably got heat stroke or something and should take a shower. And patrol leader knows that. Patrol leader comes back after said shower and is suddenly better. EMS is once again dumbfounded. He starts deducing possibilities of what it could and couldn't be, and then in some weird moment of clarity, he looks over at patrol leader's legs and notices they were scratched up while coming down the trail. Looks like a minor rash around the cuts, and he then goes over and looks at the socks the patrol leader had on. They were covered in some pollen that was purplish, blue in color. The only thing the EMS guy can make of this is that the campers, himself, and the patrol leader managed to scratch up their legs on the trail. And some plant on the trail got them messed up on some unknown narcotic. EMS dude warns the campers about going up the trail anymore. But he also wanted to organize some expedition to figure out what exactly was growing out there that caused these symptoms. He asked patrol leader if he'd be willing to lead it, and patrol leader went hard nope. All I know about the situation after this is that said EMS went up there with some of the anarchist people. and they tried to find whatever plant, pollen, fungi, or whatever caused this. We avoided that trail after the incident and never had symptoms pop up like it again. I eventually moved cross-country about 2 years later, so never figured out if EMS man's expedition found anything. Spooks me sometimes anons. So many critters, plants, and fungus can be known about, but not fully documented upon. It's spooky.
Be me. 19 kilo. Tanker. Night observation in Afghanistan. Pick up 3 distant contacts on forward-looking infrared. Look like dogs. Watch the dogs running through the poppy fields. One dog is bigger than the others. Dogs keep getting closer. About 600 meters away. These dogs are huge. 4 or 5 feet at the shoulders. Tell my gunner to put some cokes at their feet to scare them off. Gunner lights them up with a couple of bursts. The dogs jump and run a few meters away. The biggest one in the group stands up on its back legs and starts sniffing the air. It had to be 8 feet tall standing. Takes off running back away from our FOB the way it came, on its back legs like a human. The other 2 disappeared behind a small outcrop at the base of a draw. Captain comes by 5 minutes later, tells us what we saw was a pack of wild dogs, and that's what we're to put in our reports. Never brought it up again.
Ex-militia anon again. Figure I should give a more recent story. Be late spring 2022, in the Midwest. As any good old boy knows, this means one thing: walleye run. For anyone who does not live in the Midwest or lives near the Great Lakes, the walleye run is basically the redneck version of the salmon runs on the east and west coasts. For our European anons, you know the walleye as pike, perch, or zander. For myself, I'm after the walleye, but I'm also chasing after common carp, goldeyes, and red-tailed suckerfish. Some call them trash fish, but they tend to put up heavy, yet intelligent fighting tactics. This will come back later in the story, by the way. Go out to the local tributary river of the Big Mo and set one rod up for bottom feeders, and the other I'm running with drop-shot rig in some fast-moving water. Spend my time moving up and down the river with the ladder to cover as much water as possible, and watch as several fishermen come and go a bit downstream at a small waterfall area. I catch a few wallies and several red-tail suckerfish throughout the morning hours, but by about noon the fishing starts to slow down a bit. As the fishing slows down, I switch both rods into a standard bottom feeder rig setup for carp and suckerfish, as the latter I was having a fair bit of luck with, while the former was something I really wanted to have a shot at. While I was setting up the second rod for bottom feeding, I kept getting these uneasy feelings of someone watching me. I have no idea how to explain this without sounding delusional, but the river I fish is smack dab in the area I live. Having other fishermen or the occasional birdwatcher is nothing new. But this feeling, it felt wrong. Like seriously wrong. This put me on edge, but the feeling quickly disappeared as one of my rods started getting thwacked pretty hard, and of course all survival instinct disappears when a good fish hits your line. I head over to my fishing rod and set the hook, and whatever this fish was, it was large enough to put a bend in a fairly heavy-duty rod. The fish starts dancing around the entire area I have been fishing, and it's doing some tactics that allow me to give a pretty reasonable guess as to what it was. It's a carp. Oh boy. As I'm fighting this carp, I find myself constantly having to pull it away from snags in the water. This carp was a big boy, and it made sure I understood why it got that large in the first place. Constantly pulls itself near an underwater log, some reeds, and then finally it gets itself locked up under some old concrete from a bridge that was destroyed in the 2011 floods on the Mo. So I have to try and maneuver myself with this huge bitch and get it unstuck. But while I'm doing this, the carp is making damn sure it gets the line snagged again every time I loosen it up. Oh, you beautiful hog-faced bastard. As I'm doing this, the feeling of being watched starts to creep back into my head. I try not to let it bug me, but it becomes overbearing, and as soon as I twist my head to see if anyone is nearby me, the carp snaps the line. Wait, what are those footsteps? I swear I looked around and saw no one, and now someone is practically within breathing distance of me. Turn around and the first thing I see is some disheveled guy who looks homeless. And I swear I almost released bricks. Guy saw what happened with the fish and said,
Sorry to see that, man.
Nervously I kinda say, yeah, it happens sometimes with carp. I kinda sigh and ask him what's up, and while we were about to talk, a literal bald eagle flies over us. And this dude's eyes light up like a little kid's.
Oh my god, there it is.
He shouts, "Huh, oh yeah, bald eagle." Neat, and while I say this he takes out a phone and starts writing down the date and time of where he spotted this eagle. Turns out this guy is a really enthusiastic birdwatcher. And he's been following an eagle pair that was recently dislodged from its nest by Canadian geese. Screw geese. Can never be safe around those bastards. We shoot shit about the eagles and geese, and he asks if I have ever seen any bird nesting areas around here. Oh yeah, if you go to the next bridge down, tons of birds have managed to make a small nest colony under it. Mostly sparrows, starlings, and robins thou. Before I can finish, this guy thanks me and is running down the banks to the next bridge, which is about 500 meters or so down the river. 8. Back to fixing my line. Turn around and look up a nearby hill, and standing there is the most stereotypical looking man in black that I have seen in my life. This dude drove his blacked out SUV onto the nearby hill, off-road, and was watching me talk to the homeless bird watcher guy. He was wearing an all-black two-piece, had blacked out sunglasses. The whole stereotypical men in black getup. He just stands there, staring at me for what felt like 10 minutes, and I'm trying to remain calm and carry on with setting up my fishing line. All the while I'm already discombobulated by the whole bird watcher thing, and now I have a glow-in-the-dark spook staring at me. I cannot describe the feeling of being stared at by this dude. It felt wrong, the same feeling I had earlier, and now magnified by the whole reality that yes, I am in fact being watched. Eventually, I get enough courage to just look straight back at this guy, and as I'm about to get ready to wave at him, he just looks at me and nods as if to acknowledge that he knows I can see him. He then goes full Michael Jackson and moonwalks back to his SUV while keeping eye contact with me. He proceeds to open his door as if he was running a VCR and rewind from when he closed it previously. He gets into this SUV, turns it to face me for like 5 minutes, and then slowly reverses before going out of sight behind the crest of the hill. I have no idea who this guy was, what he wanted from me, but the feeling he gave me was one of being hunted by a mountain lion. It made the caveman in my brain enter full uncanny valley mode, and I just said screw this and reeled up my other rod. And went home. I don't know what he wanted, but it was enough to spook me away from fishing for a month during a really great walleye run. Also for the birdwatcher bro, the geese finally lost to the eagle pair. And they did manage to take back the nest. Hopefully that brings you some ease, my dude.
I'm basically a cop. One for an Indian casino. Unarmed and unable to actually do anything to people. But I am basically a cop, I swear. Okay. I'm a security guard, shut up. Things got screwy there for the plague shutdown. We'd see and hear stuff all the time on the casino floor and grounds at night. Be posted at the main cage because the best way to protect the cage is by posting someone in front of it at all times who has access to it, as well as the bank and vault in the cunt room. Sitting there by myself for an hour in the middle of the night with maybe 10 people total on property, including surveillance, with only the hum of slot machines to keep me company. Hear cheering on the other side of the casino. See shadows moving around in the dining venues. Cheers get closer. Shadows get closer. Air gets oppressive. Remember stories other guards tell of a previous shutdown where ghosts were messing with security every night. Verbally tell the ghost off and the air returns to normal. We'd also have to check the hotel rooms to make sure no one had managed to get inside the hotel and break into a room to squat. 10 random rooms per floor every night, with 10 floors in total in a tower that many say is haunted. I never directly saw anything in the hotel, but I felt like I was being followed and heard things all the time. Your mind starts to really mess with you when you spend an hour entering dark hotel rooms with no one around, always expecting to open a door and see something standing there. Spook City right there.
Similar story. Be me as a teenager. Get first job ever as a nighttime janitor/cleaner at this huge golf club, like 100 staff, restaurant with 200 seats, Olympic-sized pool and spa out in the middle of the woods. Working alone most nights, 8-hour shifts, just doing basic cleaning and occasionally repairing broken things, pretty chill job for a teen. Frequently see shadows moving when they shouldn't. Hear footsteps and voices sometimes when I know for sure that I'm the only one there. Things occasionally move after I turn my back to them. General feeling of oppressive unease/anxiety in the air sometimes. Scariest situation that happened when I was there wasn't spoopy. Some robbers rammed their way into the pro shop with stolen trucks while I was working alone. I had just gotten there and hadn't turned on the lights yet, so they probably figured that the place was empty. I was unarmed and alone, so I ran into a back office which I knew had a lockable back door leading into the staff corridors, called the cops with the office phone. Late 90s, so cell phones didn't work outside of the big cities and I didn't have one. After calling the cops, I locked the doors behind me and ran out the back, hid in the tractor garage and armed myself with a massive socket wrench, then waited for an hour until a load of cops arrived. I quit working there after that incident.
Always expecting to open a door and see something standing there. That happened to me and my friends, although it didn't involve being police or military, although police were involved on the other end later. Decide to Urban X, as the kids these days say, an abandoned hospital in town. Split up into 2 different groups to cover more ground. My group stays on the first floor and occasionally hear footsteps, running and door slamming on floor above. Assume it's the other group. Later when we regroup we tell them about it and ask if they were on the second floor. They said no and that they'd stayed on the first floor the entire time. Another incident, really there's a whole saga of this shit. Exploring hospital again. Worth nothing, we took Sharpies with us to mark off rooms we've already explored to avoid going back to the same areas. Open room, CPR dummy propped up in chair facing door. Tactically crap pants and run. Realize it was just a stupid dummy. Go back to room to check it out. Dark handprints on window. Box of vials with blood samples in them on the nightstand. We never found full vials of anything anywhere else in the hospital. Every time we went back afterwards, we'd always come across that same CPR dummy in a different room propped up on a chair facing the door.
I worked in a decent small town. Nobody I ever worked with would ever be complicit in drug or human trafficking, regardless of how stats conscious they were. We fired guys for stealing money on dope cases. I have heard big city agencies are more dirty though. Also some sheriffs are as well. The worst I could say is a neighboring agency just forced a retired guy who beat his girlfriend instead of arresting him like they should have. Always upset me seeing little slips like that in integrity.
It mostly tends to be the larger departments. You ever heard of that one case in Arkansas? Namely the deaths of Don Henry and Kevin Ives. It reeks of high hell of corruption.
Quick rundown and your thoughts.
2 teenagers went in Nowoods to do some spotlight hunting for nocturnal game. Both teens meet other teens who had heard a rumor about some pot growing, and they decide to look for it, although they separated a small distance. They were all within earshot of each other. The 2 that initially came for hunting, Don Henry and Kevin Ives, end up bumping into a group of adults walking around the woods at night. Adults seem peeved that these kids are there, and start demanding to know what they are doing. Both teens try to play it off, and the other teens who heard the commotion watched from nearby brush. Teens in the bush saw them move into another area, and then heard the sound of gunshots and yelling. Don and Kevin ran off, and were later found, berated, and got the shit kicked out of them by local police who forced them into the back of a cruiser. Don and Kevin afterwards were found sleeping on a nearby railroad track with a blue tarp covering them. Both got pile-drived by a train, but enough material was present to show that they had been dead for some time. Every witness that came forward regarding what they saw the night they went missing was either killed, died in a car accident, or intimidated by local police. CIA FBI has a file that's pretty much black bars for days. Several officers, district attorneys, and even Bill Clinton, then governor, have been connected to the case in local drug, human trafficking rings. Wendigoon has a pretty good video on it. My personal view is the local department was involved with the trade, and the kids came across a bunch of officers on a drop pickup.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentexts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.